1+1 Forward, the podcast powered by the Apocalypse, where we talk about tabletop role-playing games using or inspired by the Apocalypse engine. I'm your MC Rich, and I'm joined by my guest, Robert Bohl of Robert Bohl Games. Hey Rob, welcome to the show.
Hey there, Rich. Nice to be on. I've been a fan of this since the beginning, and I've been looking forward to answering the questions and everything. I'm really excited.
Good, I'm excited to have you on too. I mean, Misspent Youth is not PBTA, but it is a game that I like a lot, so happy to have you on. So let's kick it off. How long have you been playing PBTA games, and what was your gateway?
I think I might get the earliest answer other than like Meg and Vincent. I played pre-release. I was in a playtest.
Nice.
I think I played a session where the dice mechanic was you've got one color die and another color die, and if you need to use both dice, then that's a weak hit. But if you only need one, that's a strong hit.
That is wild. Okay, that I've never heard that. That is so neat.
Yeah, it might have either been dropped just before we started playing, but the when we started playing was really nice because he just made his play test books and he handmade them. He handed them out to us, and they were like, this is first edition. They were covered in like reused like wallpaper or something, and we had like an apocalypse feast of like all food that didn't have expiration dates.
Nice. Oh man, that is really cool. That's when you lived in Western Mass, right?
Yeah, I was lucky enough. I quit a job the week before the financial crash in 2008 and moved up to Western Mass, and so I had a lot of time with friends.
Nice. Well, I'm glad that worked out. That is really neat. Okay, Rob, do you have any memories, like what did you play? Were they even called playbooks?
Oh yeah, I played Vega the Hard Holder.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Las Vegas, and I had the Luxor covered in like armor plating and stuff, and that was my hard hold. And there was like a theme of like the money was poker chips.
Nice.
My people were like pit boss, pit crew type people, my militia, and I had described him as like late Michael Madsen.
Ooh.
In like a really nice suit, but like the kind of guy who's like, he'll blithely do violence, but he doesn't want any problem. He just wants like the market to run and stuff.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so cool.
Very
hard holder.
So like I had just gotten a master's in public administration, so I was like, this is going to be great. It's like goes right in with my training and experience. And then I remembered like, oh, this is management under the worst circumstances. Everyone hates me. This is terrible. And so yeah, it was well handled.
Right there in the early stages when I was still just a baby game. That is so cool. Thank you, Rob. That's quite a story. Let's jump on over here and read a sitch, all right? Read a sitch. So in Read a Sitch, what we do is sit down with our guest and talk about a specific issue of play, a journal of play, observe things happening in ongoing Powered by the Apocalypse games. Sometimes we go broader and talk about games that aren't PBTA, but darn, I mean, there's so many of those, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Rob, so what topic did you want to talk about today?
So I'm going to talk about something that's like near and dear to my heart, which is session structure. A lot of games, most games in the role-playing world, and I would also say in the Powered by the Apocalypse genre or style or approach, have the attitude of like, here's all the stuff, now start playing, and you know what to do because you're playing a game, and just go ahead. And I found that's a crucial gap, and I tend to focus on new players. Because someone who comes brand new to role-playing, who picks up my book, is going to be like, okay, what now? But also, as someone who likes to run no-prep games and has designed no-prep games, or like this game has very minimal prep where you might have to write down a couple words if you didn't get the chance to do it during play, the one I'm working on. It's an important way, and if you want to do no-prep, low-prep games, to be able to do that. If there's a session structure, then that gives you the backing you need to get what you need out of a session. And also, session structures are really good about making sure that you can highlight the important stuff, and you don't wind up with a more satisfying session. And it's something I've done before, like my prior game, and basically all my games tell you how to play, not just how to set up. So like I sort of did a survey recently of PBTA games with this in mind.
Okay.
So like Dungeon World, for example.
Right.
It has a very light touch. Basically, all it really has in terms of structure is I'm not an expert at this, so correct me if I'm wrong, is end of session XP questions. So you get the ceremony of ending the story and talking to one another about it. Night Witches is sort of on the opposite end, and it's kind of like the best example I could find of a very structured game
Right.
because it always starts at dawn. It's got these different phases, the day phase for interpersonal and bureaucratic stuff, and the night phase for combat. And what it's really clever about it is it uses the fact that military life is very structured to give you, like, this is the first thing you do every day. This is the second thing you do every day.
Yep.
Just even skimming that, I'm like, I would never have a problem running this game because it's all right there and it's not many words. And then above that, it gives you these duty stations, which are like, here's your average day. Here's the situation in this particular front. And you kind of overlap those, and it's almost impossible. I don't even have characters, and I'm looking at this, and I'm like, oh, I know how to do this. This will be great.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Watch has a structure where it's sort of mission versus everything else. The Watch is a game about like a dark fantasy war against patriarchal magical oppression. And the game starts with every session you do a mission to start with that's sort of sketchy on the details. And then the rest of play is playing out the repercussions of that and the ongoing issues between people. And it has a thing like Night Witches. I expect it was inspired. I think it was inspired by Night Witches in some degree. And then finally, so like a lot of the structure I've been talking about so far has been military because those are the examples. And the Sprawl does a really nice thing, cyberpunk game, where it's set up on the structure of getting a job, researching the job, playing out the job, and then seeing the consequences of that job and what you do about those consequences.
Right.
And each of those has a clock as well. Those are some examples. I really like it. I think, though, that what I would like to see, and I'm not doing it in my design right now, I just am making a wish to the world, is stuff that's more like Misspent Youth or Monster 1244 or even like Burning Empires, where the structure is a lot more sort of like thematic. Like, this is the thing that you start a game with, and then you go through this phase, and it's not just sort of a general phase. It's like, maybe this is the phase where people meet and see whether they fall in love. If it's a romance game, for example. And I'd really like to see that, or be made aware of it if I'm ignorant of it existing already.
I'm not aware of it either, Rob. So if it's out there and someone knows, make sure and let me know. Hit us up on Twitter, the +1forward account, because I would be interested in hearing about that. Talking about this reminds me of some of the things I've really enjoyed in running Cartel. Cartel has playbook-specific start of session moves that serve a similar function to this, because what to do is you roll against a stat for the narco or for the crooked agent that they have a roll, and it jumps you right into the middle of dealing with a problem or trying to stay ahead of the federales. And so there's a definite structure of, I know what I'm doing first, because good, bad, or indifferent, you're in the middle of some kind of action. But something along the lines of a multi-act structure like in Misspent Youth would be really interesting.
Yeah, if it was more about sort of drama dynamics than it was about fictional expectation. I think that's an area I could work on in the future, but I'd much rather someone else do it for me. But that approach that you described from that other game is cool because I have found that one of the hardest things in getting a game going is that first scene, of like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
I have solved that, in the past with like a question. You always ask this question of people, but packing that into a move is extremely useful. And is a mechanic that I've also explored.
Very cool. Well, talking about mechanics you're exploring, I think we should jump on over here and open our brains to this game you've brought to the table, okay?
Excellent.
Open your brain. All right, in Open Your Brain, our guest talks about an Apocalypse Engine game, often one they have designed or are designing. And Rob of Robert Bull Games is here, talking about a game that, as of the release of this episode, is still in a beta playtest. Is that right, Rob?
Yeah, it's playtesting during recording, and it will be in February when this is released.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we'll be playing it at conventions and stuff as well.
Cool. And so the game is called Demihumans. What is Demihumans? What's the setting? What's it about?
So the setting is loosely defined, a little bit more than Apocalypse World. There was a golden age millennia ago, And that's when there were these beings called those who came before existed. Everything was perfect and no one went hungry and there was magic everywhere. And then humans and orcs were born and started to mess things up. They're both sort of very like aggressive expansionist people.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually they came into contact with one another and fought a nameless war for generations that drew everybody into it, and eventually broke magic as things got worse and worse and more explosive. And then in the end, humans won. Now the game is about sort of the aftermath of that war. It's up to the group to decide how long ago that was, but there are people in this game who can live thousands of years old, so the war can still feel present for some people. The setup now is that humans are in control. The world has sort of moved on. Magic is dying out. Magical people are threatened both just by the reality of the changed environment, sort of the environmentalism aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
and also by the social aspect that humans are ascendant. It's a human utopia next to a non-human dystopia. And the game focuses on an enclave. An enclave is it's a subordinate community to a human city. So the humans own a city, you live either within it, next to it, under its control. The characters you play, they're called the company. Their purpose, just like if you're playing Mouse Guard, you're going to be playing a mouse who's a member of the Mouse Guard. If you're playing this game, you're going to be playing figures of note in the Enclave community who are trying to keep it healthy and thriving under the constant weight of human outrage, disapproval, and sort of exploitation of non-humans. And so the way that things are set, sort of the dials are, if you just play the game and you rack up your advances and you improve your character, the game will have a story of the end of the Enclave in all likelihood, because the things that you do to defend yourself are going to draw unfair ire from humans. But there is a way to sort of expend all your resources and focus on trying to keep the community going. And basically, that's up to you if you're willing to forego your own personal improvement for the betterment of the Enclave.
Fascinating. In Demihumans, what are the mechanics of this game that are different from, say, coming in from an Apocalypse World expectation?
So I'll say it's very close to Apocalypse World. It's even more a hack of Apocalypse World than it is strictly a PBTA game. It's sort of like Apocalypse World plus minus some stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The big changes are that the hard holders move is everybody's move. Both the hard holders moves are everybody's moves. So at the
Cool.
start of play, you have a common wheel roll to see the state of the enclave and what threatens it and if things are going well. And then it's gold in this game instead of barter. But instead of gaining barter gold, which I tried early on when you roll this, and then like it gets weird, like who's spending the gold? Is that fictional
Mm-hmm.
gold or whatever? I came up with this system of boons and banes, which is things worth roughly 1 gold that you can call on if the roll goes well for that session.
Okay.
It's different in that it's about building something, whereas Apocalypse World, I mean, certainly scarcity is even more of a thing here than Apocalypse World, because like you have to pay 2 gold in most cases to be doing fine instead of just 1, and the jobs are all pretty demeaning. What humans think you can do. And also, I pulled out a lot of the fronts and all that. I tried to make it much more of a no-prep game. There's sometimes some committing decisions you have to make around Demiurge characters. The Demiurge is the name of the MC.
Okay.
And, the playbooks are sort of a combination. Like, if you look at the Orc playbook and you look at the Chopper playbook, you're going to be like, I can see the DNA, the design DNA shared between these two.
Right.
And in some cases, it's sort of more... it's further away. It's not quite as obvious. It's more about sort of the traditional stereotypes and challenging the traditional stereotypes of what these fantasy peoples are about. But yeah, that's actually the main way it's probably different than Apocalypse World is it's heavily focused on creating fantasy cultures and examining those fantasy cultures and seeing what happens when they come into conflict and try to live alongside one.
Question, if someone comes into the game and they choose to play the Orc playbook and you've got a second player and they choose, God, I don't know, a dandelion-eating elf playbook, are they in the same enclave, or are there 2 different enclaves that are still part of the same city? Like, how does that work?
So they're all in the same enclave. They have to live together. And in fact, the HX equivalent here is called Gnosis,
Mm-hmm.
which is about how well you understand somebody. And Gnosis has a subsystem added to it called Legacy, which is that some of the peoples of the enclave have issues understanding other peoples of the Enclave. So during character creation, it says if there's a dwarven lawgiver in the company, then the elven spark singer will ask the dwarf why elves have a hard time understanding dwarves. And that's like a thing between your peoples.
Hmm.
And it's something you can pay off with experience. Instead of like getting a move, you could be like, I'm tired of my racism for this person getting in the way of my interactions with him and his friends. So I'm gonna fix that about myself instead.
Nice.
It's a lot of it is about sort of that exact issue. Like you may have been on opposite sides in the war, or you maybe just naturally don't get along, or maybe interpersonally, like you love elves but you hate that elf because that elf is a jerk who is sentenced to stay here by the other elves. So how do you nonetheless try to keep this community, and as player characters, as company members, how do you try and keep the Enclave going despite your disagreements, and in some cases violent disagreements?
Another question I have about the game is this a game that's geared ultimately for the tragic end of the Demihumans? Like, are you playing out the last days, or is there some glimmer or spark of hope to where they can survive in this hostile environment?
It's sort of halfway between that. The expected arc of a game is going to be about the destruction of an enclave.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, when it comes time to improve your character, you can be like, well, I will improve my character, or I will heal this flower of human antipathy for the Enclave. Flowers instead of clocks for anachronism reasons.
Okay, cool.
And also because of the whole idea of something beautiful dying.
Nice.
So you can be like, well, it's in a bad position right now. I'm going to heal this flower a little. Or you can say, we're going to commit to see what happens. And we're just going to, play this out. Or, maybe you get in a position where you manage to very rarely get your flower of human antipathy blackened. But that's not likely because that's one of the main jobs is to try and make that happen for the demiurge. But hope, right. So the hope there is, there's no hope that things will be fine. The hope there is you spend a lot of time and effort keeping things safe, which is how the real world works. But what I want to do is, if we get the chance to hire some designers to write additional playbooks, which I'm thinking of calling Unearthed Playbooks in honor of Unearthed Arcana.
Nice.
Yeah. That there will be a dragon playbook where the dragon is forced to stay in human form most of the time, but has a flower of resurgence or a flower of hope or something. The more of that is healed, the more magic is healed. And, in the sense that a lot of Apocalypse World extended playbooks say, this may add something you don't want to the game. The something you might not want to add to the game in this case is going to be real hope, because you could heal magic once you fully heal your flower and things will be just fine. So yeah, that would be another way to go. But in the core book, inertia leads to destruction, although not destruction of everything. It could be like, well, we make a new enclave. But you can work hard and sacrifice to keep things going. But that also is tough because then the story arc is harder, right? Like, when do you end that story? I can't write that. You'd have to get your own idea of like, this is a satisfying place to stop this.
Okay, Rob, what is your favorite move in Demihumans and why?
It's funny, I thought I knew the answer to this before making myself look back through all the playbooks and stuff. But then I did, and I realized the Trollish Green Ward has all the best moves. Its magic move is about, here, eat this part of my body, and you get better.
Whoa.
It's got the thing where you can keep healing and not die, and you can say something that really messes with someone's brain and changes their personality, and a lot of cool stuff like that. But probably my favorite is the last move I wrote for this game, which is called Eyes and Ears Everywhere. It's like almost a pun name, which I don't do generally, but I couldn't think of a better name. And it's based on Mother Aughra from the Dark Crystal.
Oh, yes.
And so, yeah, the idea is, here we go. Roll plus Effulgent. When you remove an ear or scoop out an eye and leave it somewhere to listen or watch, take 2 harm, which cannot be healed until the organ dies. On a 10 plus, it will stay there collecting sensations until you will it to die or it is destroyed by someone. On a 7 to 9, it will live long enough to give one important detail, then die. On a miss, the demiurge may choose to have you see or overhear something misleading.
That is cool. That's very Odin. I love it.
Yeah, I guess it is. I didn't think about it. Did Odin do that? He would leave it around and watch people?
Oh, not quite. No, he sacrificed his eye to the well of knowledge to become the total badass he is. So.
But no, I bet, as a matter of fact, Aughra is inspired by that for sure, because she's all about wisdom.
Absolutely. That is cool. Okay, you got me pretty excited, especially since you started off with orcs. I mean, really, you had me at orcs. But I want to give this a shot. Do you think we could act under fire and play a little Demihumans?
Absolutely.
It is time to act under fire.
Act Under Fire is our segment of actual play, a little bit of AP with the designer. I have the pleasure of having Rob here to run Demihumans. He's nice enough to let me play an orc. Plussy, the orc, is a warbander. And the stats for this game they are crazy. They're serene, brutish, beguiling, kenning, and effulgent. Quite flowery stuff going on there.
Yeah, that's a thing that's true of the whole game, is that it's written with this sort of insane poeticism that, like, it's sort of self-mockery to a certain degree. It's also, a love letter to all the vocabulary and poetry that I learned, as a 7-year-old reading D&D. So yeah, it's sort of, it takes itself seriously, but also so seriously that it's a little bit funny.
Nice. And along with creating my Warbender, there's an Enclave playbook that we worked through. That's that part of where you said the hard holders pulled out and handed off to everybody. Now, if there was an orc and, say, a dandelion eating elf player here, they would work together on the same Enclave playbook and make different choices. Is that how it would go?
Yeah, you take turns, including the Demiurge, setting truths about the world.
Mm-hmm.
We created the Enclave of Underhill
Mm-hmm.
because Richie decided the city that the humans are running now was created by dwarves. And one of my favorite things to do with dwarf cities is have the dumb humans think the top is the best part. You live in an enclave called Underhill, which is in a formerly dwarven city, and it used to be that all the non-humans lived underground. But as the human city has become too much for the top of the hill, they started to take over the upper levels of the underworld and have started to push you out a little bit. And I'll just talk a little bit about the details. Your enclave is a democracy. It's pretty large. It's got 3,000 to 5,000 people. It's a democratic organization. And I think that's enough detail on that. And when we start play, what we start with is having somebody take a turn rolling the common wheel roll. That uses the Enclave's own stat, which is modified based on the choices you make, civility.
Ah.
And because we said that it was a democratic government, you have a +1 civility.
All right, I will roll plus civility. Here we go. 6 plus 1 and +1 for civility. I have rolled an 8.
Excellent. On a 7 and 9, choose 2 boons, and the Demiurge chooses 1 threat and 1 bane. So, on our little playbook here, under boons, we have active this tale. Go ahead and look through those and check 2 of those that you want to be active and say what they are.
Well, I think I'm going to choose the boon lifestyle paid for free.
Okay, so that takes us into the lifestyle section here. So go ahead and read the top of your lifestyle section. Oh, well, let me mention, by the way, I am choosing that random search and questioning from the Imperium guard post, and the threat of carousers are available to me because of the mixed roll. So go ahead and read what your lifestyle section says.
At the beginning of the tale, spend 1 gold to keep yourself sheltered and fed. This is all a warrior needs. If you cannot or do not want to spend gold, let the troop know, and the Demiurge will ask questions.
Your miscellany worth X gold. How much of that do you have?
Yeah, my miscellany is worth 2 gold. I'm a fat cat, man. This orc's got a lot of gold.
Well, you're lucky because you only have to pay the 1. I'll just mention that gold measures what humans value. So you might be a rich orc as far as orcs are concerned, but orcs don't make things or possess things that humans value as much, so they start off with 2 gold equivalent. Whereas the trader, which is the human who lives with the Enclave, has 8 gold and only has to pay 1. You're also lucky.
8 gold.
Yeah.
8 gold.
Yes. And you're lucky because you are a warrior. Your playbook, you don't have to spend a lot, but most people have to spend 2. So do you want to spend 1 of your 2 miscellany? And miscellany is like oddments. It's like maybe you've got a coin, maybe you've got like a potion that makes your breath smell better, or whatever it is. So would you want to use your Enclave's, I think you probably would, right? Use your Enclave's boon to pay?
Yeah.
Right. So I would imagine that your people had a good day of hunting, and so there was plenty of food for everyone and plenty of good times for everyone. You're not the leader of your clan. You didn't pick that move.
That's true.
And so Gorgon is. What do you think of Gorgon's leadership style?
Gorgon's leadership style is he makes rash decisions. He's going to push us into conflict that is not to our advantage. But he's been lucky so far, so it's difficult to really challenge. Perhaps the gods favor him.
That's awesome. Great. So the Enclave has a feast hall. And you and your buddies from the Warband are in the feast hall having a good time, celebrating because, let's just say it's been a while since your people were able to eat that well and just relax. You are a rich group. You chose that for your clan, is that your clan is both mobile and rich. But we'll say you've been under the eye and being messed with, and it's been hard to be relaxed. And this is like a wonderful day. How does Plussy party? How does he relax?
Plussy will head to the feast hall because that's where the rest of the band often wants to go. But when he wants to relax, he actually will find himself often by himself at the small arts district in this town. There's a robust arts and performance community, and they're often putting on plays and open display. Sometimes they're puppetry. There are other stages where they just ask for a little bit of food for people to come to watch. And so Plussy will spend his time with his band, but when he wants to relax and enjoy himself, he'll kind of wait a little bit, hold back on getting too drunk, and then make his way over towards the street of the arts.
Great. So let's say that once your compatriots get drunk enough, you manage to slip away. And we'll say that the arts district or the theater district, the open air theater district, is close by the feast hall enough that you'll be able to hear when you're sitting down at a play. What do you prefer, dramas or comedies?
Oh, it's a Punch and Judy kind of show. It's a little bawdy.
Great. Yeah, and it's late at night too. So yeah, let's say you're the only one there that's a real fan that you can see. A lot of these people are drunk and looking for somewhere to chill, but you appreciate something about what they're doing with their body farce. That's when you hear a commotion from over in the feast hall and shouting and the sound of crashing, and you know that something's going wrong there.
Was Gorgon there when I left?
Yes, he was.
He should really take care of this. I let a few moments go, just trying to talk myself into ignoring it, enjoying this show. There's some new jokes they're trying out tonight. I quite like it, but
when you think to yourself about Gorgon, you're like, "Yep, that's his voice. I can hear him. He's the loudest one yelling."
Oh well, if he's yelling, then this couldn't be good. I'll get up, make my way out of the little playhouse, and hustle over to the feast hall and see what's going wrong.
So as you near the feast hall, do you want to ken a fraught situation?
I think I would like to ken a fraught situation.
So roll plus kenning.
All right.
One of the things that we did at the suggestion of our excellent system dev, Steve, was to align all of the stat names with the basic moves so they're easier to remember. But it's also part of why the names are so weird, because kenning is the only word that can possibly mean all those things.
That's true. And now I'm imagining Apocalypse World with a stat called acting, but that's fine. My kenning is a 1. I've rolled a 6. That is a 7.
Nice. So you can ask one question. So let me just describe sort of what you see at first. I imagine the feast hall as a low-ceilinged place and lots of little ziggurats of inverted ziggurats of discussion pits, almost a dwarven 70s thing almost.
Nice.
Thanks. And there is an Imperium guard. You have an Imperium guard station in the Enclave. And they're standing around holding weapons around one of these inverted ziggurats where you know that your people were hanging out.
How could this imperil the Enclave?
You know Gorgon very well, and especially when drunk and in front of his people after a big win, he has to make this a fight. He can't not make this a fight. And you also know that, I'll just add this, it's obvious, his people are much more impaired than the soldiers are. So the way that it can peril the Enclave is there will be a fight, and it'll be that same old story of the orcs are causing problems, and we have to do something about it. Meanwhile, you also know, because when you left, it was the case, and it didn't change much. There's no excuse for them to be bothering them. This is a pure case of harassment. So it's not like it is that. You guys were just there. Your people were just there having fun. But that's what it'll turn into in the human city, and potentially blacken a petal on the flower of human antipathy.
This is going to suck. I will march my way towards Gorgon, calling loudly, "Gorgon, I can hear your yelling all the way from the Punch and Judy show."
Gorgon stands up, he smiles, and he slams his fists on his armor to make a loud clanging with he likes to use two little tomahawk-sized axes when he fights, and he clangs them against there, and he's like, "Oh, you're in trouble now. This guy, he's as good as all of you," which is true, because Plessy is an orc as a warband of one.
That's right.
They're better armored than you, but you theoretically could take them on in a fight. So yeah, your side's really heartened by your presence, but of course the humans kind of roll their eyes, or the leader, she steps forward and identifies herself to you as Elio, and she says, "Listen, you look like the only one here who isn't drunk. We just want to take Gorgon in for questioning. Why don't you facilitate that, and then we don't have to bring anyone in."
EO, let me talk with him. Yes?
She steps aside and makes room, and one of her lieutenants kind of you hear him hissing something angrily at her as you pass. So he didn't approve of that, but she's doing it.
I'll come over to Gorgon and put my arm around him, leaning close to his big green pointed ear. "Gorgon, you and we could do some damage here, yes. But the rest of the band is too drunk. Someone could get hurt. Someone could get killed."
That's great. You're beguiling him, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you want him to leave without causing a ruckus, right?
Yeah.
Great. Go for it.
And the offer is that if he'll leave, I'll go with him to make sure that they don't do anything. They just want to talk to you.
Right. Oh, so
That's why they're
right.
here.
So you're saying go with them. Got it.
And then I will go.
And you'll go with them too. That's great. Perfect. That's beautiful. That's a good offer from a player. Go ahead and roll.
All right, here we go. My beguiling is a 1. So here we go. Oof. Okay, I rolled a 7 plus 1 is an 8.
Okay, so he must be convinced to go along, provide something tangible that assures him of your dependability, serves as evidence of your claims, or persuades him in some other way. So you say, "Let's go," and he looks around, and he doesn't actually say anything, but I'll say, if it's okay with you, you're the arbiter of orcish culture, but he has, let's say, what's an orcish thing what's a thing you would do as an orc to maybe a physical gesture or something that would show utter contempt for someone that you can't back down from, that he might have done to Elio?
I think if you mimic pulling a tooth, one of your two, the big canines on the top row, if you mimic pulling a tooth and throwing it on the ground, it's like saying you're dishonorable, you're unworthy, you're weak.
Right. So he tries to subtly tap his canine, and his it doesn't go well because everyone else sees it and they're like, "Yeah!" And the humans don't really get it, but he's accidentally just juiced his buddies. Not enough to matter for the roll, just for some detail.
Nice. "Gorgon, I will go with you. I will not allow them to shame us. Perhaps they are asking about something to do with the Enclave. Starting a fight is not why they came here."
So maybe we make that tangible by you handing over whatever weapon you're holding and going up to them. Great. So you do go ahead and describe you going out of there and what you say to Elio.
And so I turn from Gorgon and I march over to Elio, giving a quick glance to that lieutenant who was snide about her offer, treating us as equals perhaps, and I pull my axe out from the loop, and then I hand it sideways to her, the blade towards me.
Everyone, gets tense because they're starting to believe the hype that you were given, and you're the only clear-eyed one here. among the orcs. So they get all nervous at first and they kind of lean in. And then when you hand it over, they kind of lean back. And Elio smirks at her second and smiles and nods. And then Gorgon says, all right, boys and girls, I'm going to go talk to these humans. I don't have too many canines to keep ripping out, so I got to do this. And they're like, oh, that's so great. And as he comes up to you, he throws both of his tomahawks into one hand, and he shoves them into the chest of the guy who wants to start a fight.
Nice.
And so, yeah, they're gonna take you to the Imperium garrison for questioning. Then you'll be locked up with no weapons and at their whim.
Awesome. That sounds like the start of a really interesting adventure.
Indeed.
That is so cool. Rob, thank you so much for giving me a taste of Demihumans, a game that you've got officially in playtest at cons all the way through February of 2020. Oh my God, I can't believe it's 2020.
Yeah, and I'll be doing that past then too. Until publishing, I'll definitely be, and then after, supporting this as much as I can. And I want to say something, by the way. You were very instrumental early on. You and Brett Gillen. I brought the earlier version of the Orc playbook, and it was much more like, well, what you think are orcs aren't really orcs, and they're this. And both of you were like, that's BS, man. Just give us an orc. And I'm like, okay, you're right. And so you really improved the Warbender so much, and I'm very grateful for
Thank you. I'm looking at him, and I remember back in the day, and this is definitely an orc I would play 10 times out of 10. I really like it a lot.
That's huge. From
Yeah.
Orc Lord.
So for folks listening in who are like, oh, I want to go to Evil Hat's website and download the playtest packet, any specific playtest information that you're looking for?
I like Luke Crane's attitude, which is tell me how the game makes you feel. So for the official playtest that we're running, by the way, if you hear this before the playtest period is up and you're like, I can play it right away, definitely let me know. Demihumans.com is where you can go to find information. I managed to get that URL, which I was shocked by.
Nice. That's a good take.
Yeah. The playbooks are not up there, but if you find me on Twitter, Robert Bowl, or Facebook, I will give them to you and ask you to play and tell me how it goes.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Rob, for coming on and sharing Demihumans with us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Rich.
Plus One Forward is a production of the Gauntlet community, Richard Rogers and Rach Shelkey. You can find us at gauntlet-rpg.com or follow us on Twitter at @+1FWD. If you would like to support our show, visit our Patreon site at patreon.com/gauntlet. The games mentioned on this show use the Apocalypse engine, which is a creation of Vincent and Magay Baker. The music for Plus One Forward is from the Savage Aural Hotbed CD Gomi Daiko. The songs used are Gomi Daiko, Metal Version, and Drowning Attitude. You can find more amazing tunes by Savage Aural Hotbed on their website, www.savageauralhotbed.com.
Hey listeners, Jason here. I want to let you know that Brindlewood Bay is now available in the Gauntlet's $6 Patreon feed. Brindlewood Bay is a Powered by the Apocalypse game about a group of elderly women solving murder mysteries in and around the namesake town. As they investigate these crimes, they become increasingly aware of the activities of a dark cult called the Midwives of the Fragrant Void, and will have to come up with a plan to stop them. The game is basically Murder, She Wrote meets The Shadow over Innsmouth, and we think you're going to love it. Your $6 pledge in February gets you everything you need to play Brindlewood Bay. The core rules, including a file for printing them as a zine, character sheets and other play aids, plus 5 mysteries: Dad Overboard, All Hallows Scream, The Great Brindlewood Bay Bake Off, Jingle Bell Shock, and A Murder Most Mucky. So head over to patreon.com/gauntlet and make a $6 pledge to get Brindlewood Bay. Keep your pledge active and you'll also get new issues of our magazine Codex every month. Thanks.